Good morning. Good morning, everybody. And thank you very much for joining us today. I'd like to make special mention of the Indian Ministry of Education and the Association of Indian Universities. I believe we're joined today by the AIU Secretary General and some of her team. So thank you very much for your support today. My name is Marnie Watson, and I am the Chief Partnership Officer for ACUMEN, which is part of the Sanam S4 group. I just want to take this opportunity to actually acknowledge and attempt to avoid any confusion. We will interchangeably use the name ACUMEN and Sanam S4 when we talk about ourselves. We're the same organisation. It's just that Sanam S4 is our parent company, our parent organisation, and ACUMEN is the education division within that. So just to be very clear. Presenting today, in addition to myself, we have two very experienced government and international education colleagues who I would like to take a moment to introduce. Firstly, from the Australian Department of Education, we are joined by Mr. Matthew Johnston, who is the Minister Counsellor for the Australian Department of Education in India, based in the Australian High Commission in New Delhi. And from ACUMEN, we have Professor Bhavna Kumar, who is our T&E Project Director for India, and who was most recently Vice President at Amity Education Group with responsibility as the Head of International Business and International Affairs. Bhavna, if you'd like to share screen, we'll just have a brief look at the agenda today. Wonderful. Okay, so you can see here what we'll do is I'll provide an overview. I'll then pass to my colleague Matt, who'll then pass on to Bhavna, and we'll certainly, of course, make sure there's plenty of time for questions at the end of the session. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat box anytime throughout the session, but we'll certainly make time to answer all of those at the end. If we go to the next slide, please, Bhavna. Okay, so in terms of the project overview, in November 2021, the Australian government launched the Australian Strategy for International Education 2021 to 2030. And this strategy highlights the opportunity to expand Australia's high quality education offerings offshore partner countries and also online. The Australian government has contracted ACUMEN to implement a specific project, which is called the Expanding Australia Offshore Delivery through Transnational Education. And this is funded under our International Education Innovation Fund. And it's a project which is to be delivered over a 2-year period. ACUMEN's role is to research, assess and establish T&E pilots across 4 geographic regions. And we have specifically chosen India as a key and important partner for one of these pilot initiatives, and probably further pilot initiatives over the 2-year period. And we'll talk more in detail about those. Our role is also to ensure that we work in very close partnership with interested Australian institutions and Indian universities as well. And so on this call, you have, for example, myself and Chris Bandy, who's our Executive Director for Australia, New Zealand, based in Australia. And then we have our colleagues who are based in India, so we'll be implementing from both sides. If we move to the next slide, Bhavna. So for those of you who may not, excuse me, sorry. Just lost my screen. For those of you who may not have come across Sanam S4 before or come across ACUMEN before, we work with over 80 universities, vocational colleges, schools and other international education related organisations to help them with various aspects of their international activity. That may be research, it may also be T&E activities, but also the hosting of their staff in market or helping them with various admissions related activities. Our role that I touched on before is to select institutions, to partner match institutions for this project and ensure the successful implementation of these T&E pilots. We'll be providing guidance to both the Indian side and the Australian side, making sure that we can work through barriers, getting the partnership to a contractual stage, And then we have an obligation to stay involved to make sure that we can report back to the Australian government to assess the success of the pilots that we are testing. We've been working on the project so far for 6 months, and the project is actually beyond India. So there are 8 countries involved in the project. We made 3 recommendations, and from those 3 recommendations, we're now moving forward with one of those as phase 1 of the pilots. When we were choosing what to move forward with, so we, ACUMEN, but also the Australian Department of Education, we focused on these 8 criteria that you can see here on the screen. And if I could just highlight 3 of those. If we look at number 5, so making sure this is an opportunity both for the Indian universities and the Australian universities that has growth potential, that can scale. Number 6, obviously extremely important, making sure that we aligned with Indian government intentions, desires, priorities, and also economic priorities in your country. And the last point there, number 8, trying to look at innovative ways of doing some T&E initiatives. So maybe taking something that's already happening, but enhancing it in some way. And Bhavna will talk more about that. Bhavna, if we move to the next slide. So in terms of our project timelines, obviously today talking to our Indian counterparts, on Monday this week, we spoke to the Australian universities. We'll be moving in December, January into a selection phase, particularly starting with the Australian universities, which will in turn, we understand, help the Indian universities assess whether they would like to be involved or not. So December, January will be very much a selection of participants phase. February, March is when we will start the actual implementation of the T&E pilots. And then we hope and anticipate that within a 6-month period, we will be able to have students commencing studies by August of next year. It's a fast timeline, we recognise that, but that is also something we want to articulate to those who may be interested in participating, and that is that we do need speed and a desire to really get involved with this project. Depending on the number of institutions interested, this may end up becoming a competitive process, but we will assess that once we get the expressions of interest. If I could now hand over, Matt, to you for some further detail.
Thank you very much, Marnie, and good morning, colleagues, and thank you very much for your interest and attention to our first sort of kickoff webinar and information session about this project. I'll leave it for Bhavna to talk about the detail of the pilot we'll be undertaking and what that may look like. But I just wanted to set the scene as to why this project, why transnational education, and why are we looking at innovations within particular models today. So Marnie mentioned, and I think we can all recognize the profound change that has occurred in higher education as a result of COVID-19, the at scale and very fast adaptation and movement and migration to using online platforms and alternative methodologies and approaches, particularly in pedagogy, to delivering higher education courses has moved quite quickly. At the same time, we're seeing a renewed focus on internationalisation, particularly in India, arising out of the implementation of the National Education Policy 2020, but also, I think, arising from the profound changes and adaptation we've all made in our lives, arising out of COVID-19, opportunities to deliver education in a different way and to incorporate different perspectives has really come to the fore. As a byproduct, and as we all know very well, of the pandemic and a range of other, economic, global economic factors that are acting at the moment, skills and employability and the ability to produce global citizens by our higher education institutions has become even more important. The current, every day we see new articles about gaps in employability as being particular restrictions for productivity for countries, but also for the social development of all people going through higher education. We also know and have seen a real push towards providing international and global opportunities to students who may not be able to afford a traditional study abroad or student exchange experience. I know myself from my own experience of studying many, many years ago now, that the presence of international students and a very internationalized curriculum did wonders in building a global view, even if you aren't able to afford an international mobility opportunity. Transnational education, we see, offers many opportunities for a focus and driving of innovation and quality in higher education, and providing opportunities for internationalization at home. The push under the NEP towards driving greater partnerships is something that Australian universities are very keen to work with Indian counterparts to establish meaningful and mutually beneficial arrangements for both Indian and for Australian students. There are many established transnational education partnership models that have been operating for many years, and many on this call may have a lot of experience in delivering those. That's very good, and we want to continue and enhance those and continue to expand opportunities for students in both countries to undertake study through these models, which is very much now a great possibility as a result of the Indian government reforms. So the Australian government, in funding this project, really wanted to take a look at what is existing in terms of transnational education partnerships, and to do a bit of a future focus and gaze forward as to what might be coming down the pipeline, what are expected by governments of higher education institutions, but more importantly, what do students expect from their higher education qualifications, and what are their desires for the future. So the focus for our project and for our pilot really is about looking at innovations and being more future focused on how we can enhance already good and strong partnerships. The Australian government and the Indian government are working very, very closely, as was borne out by Minister Pradhan's visit to Australia in August this year. It was a very successful visit. And during that, both ministers, the Australian and Indian Minister for Education, held the 6th bilateral ministerial meeting. Australia and India are unique in having this ministerial level discussions focused on education. At that meeting, both ministers agreed that given the opportunities coming under the NEP and the Australian government's, the Australian higher education sector's flexibility and experience in transnational education, that governments would establish a working group of officials to help guide a growth in transnational education partnerships between both countries. The focus of this working group, which will kick off next year, will build on work that both governments have already undertaken this year on the recognition of qualifications. So we see this pilot as being really important for driving both innovation, for securing partnerships for the mutual benefit of both institutions from India and from Australia, but also assisting governments to really navigate and provide the architecture to our higher education systems and institutions to really take advantage and to really partner up in a more close and meaningful way for student impact and for student outcomes. So I really wanted to just set the scene for why are we as government officials interested in this. You may also have known that noticed in Marnie's introduction that I work for the Australian Ministry of Education. Australia is unique in the world in that we have education diplomats posted from our education ministry around the world. And so we live and breathe everything to do with higher education and skills every day. And I have to say my team and I, who are all here today, are really excited to work closely with ACUMEN, but also our Indian and Australian partners to make this a very successful project. Over to you, Bhavna.
Thank you so much, Matt. Always a pleasure to work and always a pleasure to welcome all the academicians and senior administrators and representatives from so many Indian universities and institutions. As a student, as a faculty, as a teacher, and as a constant lifelong learner, I am very passionate about the fact that there is a lot of scope in internationalization of higher education, specifically in our country. And I would like to take you through the pilot that is based on a rigorous research study, on a very rigorous assessment of the experience taken from the Indian higher education system, people who have been involved and who have a passion, who have the vision to take forward the Indian higher education internationalization to the next level in partnership with the innovative model that Australian higher education institutions have to offer. What we have suggested is based on the very exciting and open, and I needn't go more into that. I think we are all living it. We are hearing about it. We are understanding it every day with the new education policy. And not only the new education policy and what the government have been saying, but as faculty, as administrators, as leaders, as program representatives, and as people who want the Indian youth to get the best of all worlds, we know that this is a very exciting opportunity for Indian higher education institutions to make a mark, and no better way than to have transnational education partnerships. Australia is one of the countries that has always been very open to having partnerships with Indian universities and institutions. There are some existing forms of transnational education initiatives that we have seen between Australian and Indian higher education institutions. And our recommendation for the pilot is that we enhance those existing forms with what is the need of the hour. It is not only to transfer credits. It is not only to send some students abroad and have them go around the country. It is not only also just to welcome students to India and show them the very enormous, vast, beautiful culture our country has to offer. It is something which has to be innovative, which is going to go deep down into the curriculum, which is going to go deep down into leading to employability of students, which is going to go deep down into making people realize that what the industry needs, it is going to be possible with the best of partnership between Australian and Indian universities. Hence, we propose that there has to be a focus on work integrated learning, which is always something that our industry have aspired for from regular programs as well. If we are able to scale up our existing programs through better curriculum development, through innovation in teaching pedagogy, through having faculty to faculty interactions between Indian and Australian universities, while talking about the transnational education models, whether it is articulation, whether it is a dual degree, whether it is a joint degree, whether it is some kind of a program that is already in existence, but there has to be a partnership which is also leading to having the bridge that connects the youth with the needs of the industry. Hence, the model proposes work integrated learning with best of innovative steps, whether it is in the area of curriculum, faculty development, or in terms of being able to give more practical knowledge to the students. These could be the articulation of part program being done here, part program being done in Australian universities, leading to the award of degree from the Australian higher education provider. It could be a twinning model where the students are spending a duration of the program in respective institutions. It could be the dual degree, it could be the joint degree. All of these programs and all of the models have a very strong potential to be able to scale innovatively, with the emphasis of enabling students to have more hands-on experience, to have more hands-on work integrated learning experience related to the curriculum. If somebody is teaching artificial intelligence, then rather than just taking a lecture on artificial intelligence, the emphasis is to be able to work with a faculty in Australia, to be able to work with an institution in Australia, which is also researching in that area, which is also having industry projects, and simultaneously in Indian industry sector, to be able to identify the industry which are looking to hire the students who would have learned and who would have implemented, who would have the ability to work on what is the requirement in the industry rather than having to go through a training again. The focus here is on, again, employment-focused programs to be able to enable students to access any kind of electives, curriculum, and jointly develop innovative curriculums developed by institutions of India and Australia together to instill the necessary cognitive, the necessary employability skill, and more important, the practical know-how. More important, the actual implementation of whatever is being taught in classrooms to be brought to the industry through the best practices of Indian higher education system and Australian higher education systems. We propose to create degree-relevant work placement opportunities in India by also involving the very necessary component of the Indian private sector while the students are undertaking the transnational program in collaboration with the Australian higher education institution. So why are we saying that Indian higher education institutions should be applying? And what is the necessary mindset? What is the necessary ecosystem that is required for this very exciting, very useful, very need of the hour pilot to become successful? It is something which is the need of the hour for higher education itself. As Matt was saying, we've all been students, and there are so many things which we felt could have been done in a much better manner. So innovation is the key here. It has to be something which is bringing education alive, which is making people feel at the heart that this is the area, this is the program I want to study. It has to be leading to employability. It has to be something which is giving the student the confidence that, yes, this program will help me to become more employable. It is a program which is going to help Indian institutions and Indian universities develop in the best possible manner with the required best practices of internationalization, not just having a study abroad program or a program of spending some weeks abroad, but the actual best practices of internationalization, which are ingrained by having exposure to faculty, staff, working together, actually working together on curriculum, actually working together on how do we teach better, on working together for cross-national and very, very important research projects. And this all is actually the parameter that defines these days the ranking and the brand equity as well. When you are sharing a common platform, designing curriculum which is leading to employability, designing a curriculum which is innovative, designing a curriculum which is accepted by the industry, which is actually wanted by the industry, then automatically the institution develops, the equity develops, and the rank automatically develops. So what are we looking for? We are looking for an out-of-the-box thinking innovative model where there is no limit. And the limit is that you have to see what education is actually needed in this hour. What is the meaning of education? By involving work integration within the learning platform, by involving industry, by collaborating with the private sector who is also willing to come to classrooms, who is also willing to take students to their places of projects, make them feel that, yes, the project itself becomes a place where they learn with a full institutional commitment, and no space for longer approvals, fast tracking of approvals, proper marketing support, dedicated resources by the Indian university and the Indian institution. Quality assurance and enhancement will have to be the pillar and foundation if we are wanting to have two higher education institutions across borders work together. And this is only just a limited list. What is required here is a model that will showcase that, yes, internationalization between an Indian and an Australian higher education institution is actually leading to the products which are going to be coming out of these programs as the youth that we want to see as having emerged from our higher education institutions, as having made a difference to the world that they are in. So I will just request Mani to again go through the next steps and the key timelines here, just to reinforce. And then I see some questions coming in. Maybe we'll take them one by one.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And to reiterate, this is a repeat of a slide you saw earlier, but we really want to explain what the next steps are. So you can take note of this link here, this web link here, but we will also send it to everybody after the meeting. On this link, there is more detail about the project. You'll find a recording of today's webinar in about an hour or so, and we'll also put this presentation deck up. Most importantly, perhaps, is a section on the landing page for expressions of interest. So the next step from this conversation is that if you are interested in being kept informed about the opportunity to partner with some Australian universities and Australian University, we will know who the universities are by end of January, let's say, and we will then be following up with you to start making connections. So the request here is to really look for that expression of interest on this landing page, which again, we will send through to everybody after the call today. February, March is when we will start the implementation. So that's when we start ensuring that both sides, both universities, understand what each other is seeking to achieve. We get clear on all of the academic aspects, the recruitment of students, the marketing and the financial aspects. And then as we've articulated, we are trying to move quickly. We are trying to test different opportunities. And so ideally, we're hoping the first students will be starting their program in August of next year. Important is questions. So we really would welcome anything that anyone would like to ask. And I might ask colleagues just to help me over on the side here. Maybe if we want to come off screen share, and then we can just work through some of these questions. So the first one here is from Professor Mehta. Thank you very much for your question. Is the program open to digital, online or blended education? Any specifics on this? So the short answer is that we are very open to initiatives. Online is a perfectly permissible approach to this. It hasn't necessarily been the approach we have come in with the thinking behind, but the short answer is that we're at a very early stage. We're communicating you at the earliest stage of developing what might be possible. So my short answer in there is yes, let's please have a follow-on one-on-one catch-up and discuss more about how that might work and might be possible. Matt or Bhavna, would you like to add anything to what I just said then?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Marnie. And then maybe digital, blended, anything again with the specific objective of being a program which is also aspired. I mean, the students would like to become a part of that program, and there is a scope for being able to work with similar Australian university and higher education system. So that open to discussions further, yes.
And I would probably add to that this is a pilot. And it is about, pushing boundaries and testing new models and thinking forward and trying to anticipate what's coming next for what's coming down the pipeline for higher education. So I think to reinforce Bhavna and Marnie's point of view, I think everything can be on the table, and we will learn. We will all learn from this process, and we may just really crack that new next model that will work for both countries and for all institutions. So keeping these sorts of issues on the table is really important.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Bhavna. I'm just peeking through the questions. Would anyone else like to ask anything about the project, about how it works?
Yes.
Sorry, yes.
There's a comment here, Marnie. There's a comment here from Harpreet Singh Kandra, who's asking about funding joint honors research projects at undergrad level and postgrad collaborative research projects.
Yes. Sorry, Harpreet, was there a question? Or Bhavna, sorry, was there a question in there?
Yes, it's in the Q&A. So
beg your pardon?
While making a valid comment about the need of teaching methods to be actually going through an overhaul for success of internationalization, which is actually what we hope to bridge. When we talk about this pilot, one of the aspirations that we have is to make Indian teaching methods also evolve, also grow, Harpreet. But for funding, this is going to be funded, but maybe Marnie, you can clarify more on that.
Yeah, so just for clarity on the funding, so the funding is to ensure that there is project management around this opportunity. So that will cover off ACUMEN, partner matching institutions, ensuring we find appropriate work integrated learning environments, ensuring both institutions are able to reach the stage of actually having a memorandum of agreement, and able to move forward on the process. It does require institutions to fund their own time, their own initiatives in terms of recruiting students. So yeah, just to clarify that. But again, Harpreet, sorry, I'm just reading your message. Apologies, I didn't see it in the Q&A. I was looking elsewhere. Around research projects, postgraduate collaborative research. Again, I think to repeat the phrase Matt used, everything's on the table at this point. We are trying to seek interest from institutions who have a hunger to work quickly with us on an initiative which can be implemented ideally within a 6-month period. So we're open to the different types of education levels, education delivery models. Vineet, thank you for your question. So we'd like to showcase a working true blue T&E model between Deakin and Chikara under a licensed curriculum transfer pathway. Matthew was there with the Deakin president at Chikara. How can we showcase this in this dimension? Matt, do you want to help me with that? I mean, maybe I'll just jump in quickly and say, absolutely, we would welcome any follow-up conversations, particularly between Bhavna and myself, and Harish, who's online, some of our other people involved in the project. We would welcome all insights and sharing of knowledge. We're very grateful for that. But Matt, anything else?
Yes, I would reinforce those views that it is an opportunity to showcase that great work that is happening between Deakin and Chikara University. Is one of the, probably successful models, getting to one of the questions that have been posed here. So there's always opportunities to showcase what is already working and already existing. And so the expression of interest process that will be run by ACUMEN will be about, elucidating some of these models and otherwise for participation in the pilot. But you're right, it's a very good example of a partnership-based approach for T&E delivery, and is very popular with students. So it is one that we can always point to as a successful example. So thank you.
Sure. Next question around naming some of the Australian institutions working in online education and digital education. That's actually a very significant question that, Bhavna, feel free to jump in from the projects you've worked on. My preference would be to take that offline and share, because particularly given the COVID push, there are a lot of Australian institutions who are being, to be fair, very innovative, taking some of their learnings over the last 2 years and putting those into various either self-directed, self-created online platforms, or using third-party platforms to host their curriculum. So I look forward to following up separately on that one. Bhavna, anything else you want to add there?
Yes, I find there are a lot of, there's actually a lot of interest from a number of Australian universities and institutions, and I'm sure Matt can also comment on this question. And there are a number of opportunities. The key here is to be able to establish that connection when you're working together and be a fit for each other. As long as the thoughts match, the way of working matches, and the passion for delivering best of education matches, then there is no reason why any kind of a innovative model, whether what we have seen in existing models or any other model that we want to take, whether it is a curriculum transfer or a licensing or credit transfer or joint degree or dual degree or a certification, anything and everything is a possibility.
Wonderful. A question here. I was late to join the session. So would we help to collaborate with universities who support entrepreneurship? Absolutely, yes. I think that ties very powerfully into the message we were delivering around ensuring that what we're offering has a very practical lens to it as well, in terms of that relevance to future employment, and consequently entrepreneurship being key part of that. So yes. Was a question around an international conference on sustainability in March. Again, would welcome a conversation on that. SUNMS4 held a sustainability related conference to do with the SDG goals, Sustainability Development Goals last year. Something that we were very proud of in terms of the contributions we had around that. So again, very open to having that conversation, which we can again take offline.
There's a question above which we missed, which is from Karthik, which says about talking about the various models that have worked in India. I can talk about my experience, and I'll also welcome Marni from based on her to add on to. So India has been seeing a lot of excitement in transnational education and as well as internationalization from some players, as we just discussed the Tichkara and Deakin model, which has come into play. Otherwise, articulation where you start a program in India, you transfer credits abroad to the Australian partner university, and finally those credits lead to the award of degree from the Australian university. Yeah, there are also now examples which are very successful examples of universities working together on joint degree programs. When you talk about joint degree programs, then there is actually a ownership of the entire duration of the program together, and the entire, whether it's a 3-year or a 4-year undergraduate or a 2-year postgraduate, whatever program, it is delivered with joint understanding, joint exchange of ideas, joint curriculum. And when the program is being delivered, then the credits are also being accepted by both the institutions and universities, and the award that is given is a joint degree award. The dual degree, what the NEP and also which is now soon going to be seen, is that you get 2 separate degrees, but again, the complete duration of the program is accepted, whether you are doing a part of the program in one university or a part of the program in another university. The credits earned at the other university can also be accepted or transferred, and that is where internationalization actually comes in, where there is, and what Matt also mentioned, the acceptance of qualification frameworks. These are all very exciting steps that are leading to the whole global world becoming one education platform soon. It's basically, you talk about the way that you would like to collaborate, the way that you would like to exchange ideas, you would like to exchange credits, you would like to exchange knowledge, you would like to welcome knowledge, and that model has been a success in some form or other in some Indian organization.
Thank you. Comprehensive response. Thank you so much, Bhavna. Can I invite any other questions from anybody? And if just while anyone's thinking of what they'd like to ask, can I just reiterate our eagerness to have follow-up conversations? So, you know, whilst you will get an email out that gives you the follow-up information, I really encourage you to reach out to Professor Bhavna Kumar, particularly, who's based in India. She has a team who work with her, and that I think we can progress some of these conversations a lot more deeply in a one-on-one conversation.
I'm just sharing my email also on chat with everybody, also on the screen here for ready reference of everybody in case they want to send a mail.
Wonderful. Thanks for doing that. Well, I think we may, I'm just going slowly just to check whether anything else comes up. I think we might leave it there, and thank you all very, very much for your interest in joining today's conversation, and hopefully in the future participating in this really exciting initiative between the Australian Government's Department of Education, ACUMEN, which is part of SunMS4, and your institution or your organisation. We're really very excited about this, and a big thank you to my colleagues. It's an important partnership. And so, Matt, thank you so much to you and the Department of Education for all the support. And Bhavna, thank you for today. We will leave it there. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.